Joya, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brad. It's great to be here. I'm really excited.
Hey, I'm glad to have you here. So, what have you been going through the past few years, and what have you overcame? I think your story is super powerful, and people definitely need to hear this. So, would you mind diving into that?
Absolutely. That's why I'm here is to tell my story, to get it out to people and hopefully offer inspiration and hope and education to people who are dealing with the C word, cancer. So I am a two-time cancer survivor. I was originally diagnosed back in 2016 when I was around the age of 34. And at that time, I really didn't see it coming. My grandfather had had cancer, and my father had had prostate cancer. But you always hear things like, oh, if your mother's had cancer or your sister's had cancer, breast cancer specifically. But it didn't come like that for me. So I really didn't have any clue that this was kind of like a ticking time bomb in my genetics. So at that time, it was really the worst of the worst, like sitting in the doctor and hearing all of these words like fast growing, aggressive, need to put you on chemotherapy right away. So, really, like within 1 week, my whole life completely changed. I also had a toddler, I had a 2 year old at that time, I was working, and everything changed so quick. During that first round, I did really everything the doctors said, as I think people should, but I didn't go deeper into healing or alternative therapies. I just was like on the fear train of I have got to get this figured out and fixed, and I don't want to die. So I went through chemotherapy and like the whole thing that you see on TV where you lose your hair and you're super sick. I couldn't work for like 8 or 9 months. At that time, I was also doing immunotherapy. I did double mastectomies with reconstruction, where they basically take out all your breast tissue and slowly, over many surgeries, put back together some implants, basically. It's nothing like just getting breast implants for cosmetic reasons. It's a long, arduous process, and there was tons of infections, lots of surgeries, and lots of emergency surgeries, shots, pills, everything. So it worked though when the chemo knocked it out, the immunotherapy knocked it out, and I was basically declared cancer free, or they say no evidence of disease once the big surgery came. So that was great. And a lot of stuff was happening in my life around that same time frame. Like I also got divorced in the same time frame, and my mind, like my emotions, like there was just tons of emotional trauma, and coming out of two big major life events like that, my mindset was such that I was like, I am done with cancer. Like, this is not going to own me. This is not a part of my identity. I'm going to grow my hair back out and I'm going to move on. And my life, I'm going to create some version of my life that it looked like before, like, but how I wanted it to turn out, like married and like nothing is wrong with me. 6 years go by, and a lot happened in that time frame. My career, on one hand, blew up in a good way. I was doing really good things in the career. My daughter continued to get older. I got used to being independent, being a single mom. 2020 also happened in that time frame. And just like the rest of the world, I was super stressed out and drinking a lot and not controlling my stress or really thinking about anything self care. And like I said, I had made a very conscious decision to push down that part of me that was cancer survivor. So there really was hardly any thought put into preventative measures, which now, being the person that I am now, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can never think not to think about health all the time. But it really wasn't like I took a pill every single day. I never got off the pill that they told me to take. I saw my doctor every single year on schedule, I wasn't going off the rails here. Like, I was doing the thing that the doctors say to do. And the appointments, I love my oncologist. I love him. I love him so much. He saved my life a couple times, but they were very short, quick. How's the pill working for you? And okay, cool. It's good. It's good. You're good. I'm good. We're good. And that was it. And there was really no, if there was education ever given to me about preventing recurrence, it went over my head because I can't think of anything. Like, there was nothing about nutrition or lifestyle or anything stress related to talk about how to prevent reoccurrence. So I was shocked when it came back. It was pretty much almost 6 years to the date. And when I got my second diagnosis, I had been going for these ultrasounds every 6 months, this whole time, like the whole time. And they would ultrasound and look for little bumps or anything like that in the reconstructed breasts. And it was always, you're good, you're good. So imagine every 6 months for 6 years, you're like getting this little checkup. Everything is good. Your doctors are looking at you. They're saying everything's fine. So I went to this checkup, and I mean, it was so routine to me at this point in time that I was like, I got my stuff to go to the bank. I'm going to go do this afterwards. I'm going to do this. But it was really a very different checkup. You know, pretty early on into that exam, I realized that something was wrong. It brings me back to the moment to talk about it. I'll get through it. Yeah, and within 3 or 4 or 5 days, I got the phone call that it was the same exact cancer in the same exact breast, which again, like, remember, I've had mastectomies. They have taken out all of the breast tissue, but it had come back, and I found out there was more than one tumor, which had also been the case the first time around too. So it was pretty much like a horror show, like a living nightmare. Like, I thought I was going to die. Up until that point, all I had heard was, you know, the story of the mom who it comes back and then she dies, like on TV or whatever, the movies or something. You know, you see that storyline where the poor mom, like, her breast cancers come back. And I hate to say it like that because I know people that's happened to. So really, that was my only narrative in my head of like, if this comes back, I will die. So I thought I was going to die, and I was really angry and really terrified. So those were the two big emotions that I was dealing with. But things get better. So the other thing that I was dealing with the anger because I felt like I had trusted the system, this process. Like, no one had given me a heads up. No one really, like, it was just out of my mind that this could happen, that it could come back. And something deep down inside me, Brad, was like little warning bells were going off. Like, I was starting to get just intuitive messages that, okay, this time you need to do more. Like, you need to do your part. You can't just trust them. I trust them to a certain extent still, but you cannot trust somebody with your body. Like, your body is your responsibility. And I started having that come through. And I luckily had been exposed to functional medicine through some podcasts the year before, and I had done some fasting to lose weight. But I had heard little bits and pieces about, you know, food is medicine and fasting and meditation and things like that. So I started to just dive into researching anything that could help me. Okay, but at the same time, I have the same oncologist, and he's like, okay, we're going to do an even harder chemo this time. And then you're going to do radiation, and then you're going to do immunotherapy, and then you're going to do surgery. And it's like, my gut was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do chemo again. Like, I don't want to do chemo again. Like, I really don't ever want to do that again. And I need to pause here and just say, like, because I know people will listen to this that have cancer, loved ones with cancer. This is not medical advice at all. I would never advise someone to not do what their doctor said. And that is not what I did. I did what the doctor said. But you should just know enough to know that it's your body, it's your responsibility to learn about what is out there and make the best choice for you and put your whole heart into it, whatever you choose. So luckily, like literally by the grace of God, my oncologist allowed me to start immunotherapy with the intent of getting me through a couple months, hopefully shrinking the tumors down so that in the summer, when I would be off of work, I could get surgery and then start chemotherapy. So I started on the immunotherapy, but again, like at the same time, I'm like, I need to do more. Well, I found some really awesome resources. I started learning about mostly like nutrition is what I dove into, anti-cancer foods, anti-cancer diet, anti-inflammatory diet, supplements, herbs that can be really potent antioxidants. I did incorporate some fasting. Again, I'm in immunotherapy land, like I'm working with my oncologist. So I'm telling him all the things that I'm doing. And luckily I've had a really respectful, good oncologist who, he would advise me if there was something he really didn't want me to do, but he was pretty much fine with me doing all of that other stuff. And he's just like, yeah, whatever you want to do, you can do it. So I was taking all these supplements and working on nutrition and the body, but also trying to work on the mind and the emotional aspect too. So getting more into journaling, meditation, rest, just like slowing down the pace of my life, canceling social events, and just basically like kind of like a butterfly in the cocoon, like before it comes out, like just being in my body and trying to process some past traumas and deal with difficult emotions. Literally anything that I could think of, I did. I'm also a Christian. So at this point, I'm like on the floor, face down, praying to God. I would take oil and anoint myself every single night. I'm sorry. And I got a miracle. So it took about 4 months. And I remember that because it was about 4 rounds of immunotherapy. And during this time period, I could start to feel the tumor shrink, which was a really exciting thing. And it just kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. By the time summer comes, I am having an MRI to kind of see what's going on inside before surgery happens. It's totally clear, like literally like not anything lit up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like what's happening? And so I talked to my surgeon. He's like, we're still going to do surgery. Like they had marked internally where the tumors were, like they knew where to go in and cut out. We're still going to do surgery. There's probably something left there that MRI is just not picking up. So did the surgery, and it seemed like forever to get the results back, but they looked at everything that had once been cancer, both the tumors, and it was complete response. Like it was completely gone. So I'm like freaking out, like go to my oncologist. I'm like, what the heck? Like, did you think this was going to happen? And he definitely was like, no, this is not what I thought was going to happen. We thought it would shrink it. Hopefully it might not even shrink it, but I've never heard of this in the research. I've never heard of someone, using this immunotherapy and it completely leaves. He definitely is on my same page. Like we think it was a lovely combination of God and a miracle. The lifestyle and dietary changes that I basically like detox my body. And I say detox my body, my home products, my bath products, my mind, my spirit. Like I detoxed Joya, and the immunotherapy, definitely. I think the combination, the integration of all of those things got me to where I'm at now, which is still healthy. I've had a few MRIs since then. It's still all clear. And I'm just loving life. Have become totally obsessed with health and prevention and mindset and just a healthy living lifestyle.
Thanks for sharing every detail. And I mean, it's such a beautiful story because, and it's so important and great that you're sharing this message on this podcast now and in general in your work that you do now, because I mean, like you said before, you referred to the TV show example of, oh, the single mom gets the cancer back and then she dies. It's like that's what people hear. People hear so often the negative stories of,
Yeah.
hey, someone gets cancer, automatically we think cancer, okay, that means death. They're probably gonna die. And it's like, of course, I don't have any medical advice to offer because I'm not a doctor and I haven't researched too much into this. From everything that you said, the immunotherapy plus the lifestyle changes, mindset shifts, all that, I mean, you and I know how powerful shifting your mind is and your lifestyle is to health in general, right? And I wish that that was more talked about in, you could say, the medical community, but even more generally speaking, just in life as a whole. The whole self-improvement concepts, improving your mental health is becoming, a greater task, and it's becoming more public now. But in our systems, you could say, I want to say it's not as potent as it could be. All of that difficulty that you experienced for years, all the aspects of the cancer, the surgeries, the pain, the emotional part of it, you getting divorced, having to deal with everything as a whole. That's something that people would say. A lot of people would hear your story and say, "Oh, I wouldn't have made it through. I couldn't have done that." And I mean, of course, we would sit here and say that you can, and anybody can.
Yep.
So many of us, just illness in general, diseases in general, there's such a mindset of, once you have it, like you hear about someone who has it and you're like, all right, yeah, they're probably going to die. And there's just no, wait, maybe they could do this to help themselves. Or in large part what you were talking about, the preventative measures of making sure, for example, you had people in your family who were dealing with it. And so genetically that might be like would have been a little thing that snuck in there to a degree. But those preventative measures, if those were introduced to people more often, then how many more people would maybe not even experience something like cancer at all?
I totally agree. And this is one reason why I'm like, let me put myself out here and do podcasts and get on the social media and try to tell this story and tell this narrative. One is to inspire people, like I said. Like, I want people to know that there is hope no matter what stage of cancer you're diagnosed in. There still can be hope. You just do not know what can happen. And or for any chronic illness, but also that education, just like you said, of the prevention and the lifestyle changes. Where we're at now in America, we focus a lot on early detection. And I think that that's great. Early detection saves lives. Early detection, go for this screen, go for this. And yes, you absolutely should do all those screenings. But I know I rarely hear anything about prevention, preventative medicine. And it's because I feel like people know this, but pharmaceutical companies run a lot of what goes on. So our commercials are inundated with pharmaceuticals. Our doctors are wonderful people, but they're not getting basic nutrition in their studies in the most part. There's some that do, there's a lot that don't. And they're just trying to give a pill for every ill is kind of how we talk about it in the holistic health community. And my biggest kind of takeaway that I want to impart upon people is that this is your body, this is your mind, this is your heart, this is your soul. It is your responsibility. Don't just leave it up to fate. Like, take steps to prevent things, whether it's a bad back when you turn 50 years old, or it's a heart attack, or it's cancer, or it's living stuck in a negative mindset. I'll get to this, but I do holistic health coaching, and I tell people, I'm like, I think the biggest thing is the mindset. And I know you and I can like talk about this stuff. I think you start with the mind. So I tell people, I get people on Instagram reaching out to me of like, well, what did you do that like they want to know? What's that one pill? What's that one supplement? Well, it's a whole thing. It's a lot more than just one special IV or one special, nutrition thing. But I say, whatever you do, whatever you decide to do, mindset, like, you have to believe it's going to work. If you are self-doubting, or if you get stuck in fear, shame, any like low vibrational emotion, it's not going to work. You gotta get your mind right. I am not perfect. This is the thing that I love to work on for myself too, but your mind can be expanded. Your mind can be strengthened. And I feel like it's the hardest muscle to train. Would you agree?
I definitely would. Your mind creates your reality, whether we
Mhm.
want to accept that idea or not. When you start to, if you don't believe that's true, if you start to say, all right, well, let me just look into it, well, then you'll find tons of research and information of, wow, this is crazy. And how many times do people just alleviate the control? It's so easy to say, okay, I'm not in control. Situation owns me. I'm not able to change this. There are certain situations and occurrences that happen in our lives that might not necessarily be our fault in it. It was as a result of something we did, but it's always still our responsibility to deal with it because it's like, well,
Mhm.
you have two options at that point if something horrible happens to you. You can say, okay, well, my life sucks now. This is too bad. I'm going to accept this and, maybe it's going to take my life or I'm just going to suffer for the next 40 years or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Or you could say, all right, I'm here right now. This sucks, and you go through the emotions and you don't neglect them. You feel what you have to feel, and you go through the process. But you make the little mindset shift of, all right, well, what if it is possible that I can overcome this? And then that little what if opens up a huge door
Mhm.
of possibilities to, okay, maybe I should look into this. Oh, I know this person is knowledgeable about this, so let me talk to them. Maybe they can give me some insight on this and
Yep.
give me a new habit to incorporate into my life to change something. In my own experience and hearing everybody else's experiences from talking to so many people, you just realize how there's some things that you might tell someone and someone might say, oh, well, that's such a small thing. That's such a small change that you did. We don't realize how much a small practice or a small mindset shift can change your entire life. Your life can completely suck and you can pick up one new habit and do it for 5 minutes a day. And that might just be all you need to change your entire life. And of course, in a lot of situations, if your life is completely in the gutter, you're going to most likely need to incorporate more than one habit into your life and clean everything out mentally and physically. But I completely agree that your mind is the most difficult muscle to train because in most of our lives, it's fighting against us, right? Of course, when you do physical workouts to work out muscles, there's resistance because, lifting the weight, if you're doing weightlifting, for example, it's hard to lift the weight sometimes. But your body is still pretty able to, naturally do it. You could just do a lower weight. With the mind, sometimes it's tough because sometimes you might be trying so hard and sometimes you might even lessen it down and try just a little bit and it still might be hard because our brains are primarily wired for negativity because we're still stuck in the we're wired for survival.
Yeah.
Thinking about the all the positive possibilities of tomorrow, those are great and all, but all right, what if this happens? Because your mind wants to be prepared. Well, yeah, it's not healthy for us to think about the 50 things that could potentially go wrong tomorrow, even though they probably won't. But if your mind thinks about it today, well, then you could say, okay, well, if this happens, then I would be able to do this. Thinking, you could argue, and I would even say thinking about the negative possibilities is a good thing to do on occasion with certain situations, definitely. But as we see mental health taking a huge toll down on people, we're letting our mind control us instead of us controlling our mind.
Yeah. And another difference between the Joya then, the Joya now, I don't think it was healthy that I tried to stuff down that identity, those emotions. Like, I really wanted it to be like a quick fix. I'm done. I'm over it. So this time around, really changed my diet a lot, cleaned it up. I try to exercise as much as I can, but I've been in counseling since I got re-diagnosed, and that really has helped. So, if you are struggling, if you're listening to this out there, counseling's wonderful. Don't be afraid to try it. My counselor has helped me with things like, I think a lot of cancer survivors naturally would deal with fear of recurrence. And I have those thoughts, like I'm human, like I've had it twice, like it could come back. But I'm just so dead ass about, like, when that thought comes, I capture it and I like release it back out. Like, if it comes back, I am more than capable of dealing with it. I know exactly what to do times 1000% at this point in my life. Like, I will be fine. Like, I'll be okay. We're all gonna die at some point in time, and I I don't want to die of cancer. I want to live until I'm 100. So I tell myself that all the time. Like, I'm going to die when I'm 100 in my sleep, in peace. So that's it's just, it is what it is. And in the meantime, why did all this happen to me? Why, why should I like stuff it down? Why should I try to keep it a secret or feel embarrassed that I've gone through such struggles? I'm pretty sure I'm here for some other reason other than to just do my day to day normal stuff. Like, I'm pretty sure at this point, I am here to help other people, whether it's ladies that are going through breast cancer or just anybody. You mentioned a minute ago, people just get into this shift of like, I guess this is how I'm going to be, and some people, like, even if it's just simple digestive issues, they seem to just, well, I guess this is just me. I'm just always going to have an upset stomach. That is not how our bodies were made to be. Our bodies are amazing. They're continuously healing themselves, continuously detoxifying themselves. With just a little education about how to properly support our bodies and detoxify all of the junk that is constantly coming in through the food chain and the nutrition as it is in America, and with just the environmental toxins. There's tons of things that you can do to reduce your toxic load. So I love teaching about that. I'm excited to be on this podcast and just continuing on to spread this message. Like, there's a lot out there that you can do, I promise.
And I often think about the subconscious part of my mind when I think about these areas. It seems as though our mind makes true what we try and convince ourselves, even if in reality there can be all of the evidence to the contrary of what we're thinking. Let's say one specific area and something just a negative situation just keeps happening. It's like it's so interesting that in so many of these different situations and things that happen to us, we sometimes create our own problems. This is a scary concept in part because it's like, okay, well, I've always been under the perception that things are just happening to me and that this is just happening and I don't know if I can do anything about it. And it's like, what if you are playing a role in it? And the scariest part about this for most of us is, okay, now that you're aware that you might have a part in it, now you have to take the responsibility of saying, okay, what can I do about it? And of course, in most of us, we don't want to do that. We want it's everybody else is doing it, so it's like, okay, well, no, it's this person's fault, it's John's fault, it's my father's fault, it's everybody else's fault, it has nothing to do with me. Wait, maybe it does have something to do with me, right? And not necessarily, but if we can have that little bit of vulnerability within ourselves to just look at that and say, okay, well, oh wait, I do this for like an hour every day, and this just doesn't serve my mental health. Or,
Mm.
I hang out with this person every weekend, and they just make me feel like shit. And it's just you have these little realizations when you actually take a step back and look at your life and say, okay, this goes back to the control. What can I control? There is so much that we can control. What you were saying before, and just adding on to it, we play so much of a part in our outer reality and we don't even know it, and it could be just the littlest thought that might just be a sentence or two of, let's say, I'm not good enough. You just think that maybe like 3 or 4 times a day at random times.
Mm.
So a situation happens or someone asks a question you might not know the answer to, and you're like, oh, I'm not good enough, I don't know anything about this, I'm stupid. What I always think about is the deepest parts of our brain don't know the difference of you being sarcastic or joking or
Mhm.
just saying it
Mhm.
in general. So you could say I'm not good enough all the time, and even though in your conscious brain, of course, you know that's not healthy for you and it's not going to serve you, whatever you feed your brain does everything in its power unconsciously to make that a reality. Positive or negative, it
Yeah.
doesn't care which, because it doesn't even know what's positive and negative. It just knows what it's experiencing. And it's like, okay, you're feeding me this. I'm going to amplify it because that's what I do. Because that's the power of the mind. And so that's then leads into, okay, if we can harness and feed ourselves positivity and health and exercise and great mental exercises, well, then our mind amplifies that, and that's where we get the positivity and how we create a great life for ourselves.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I have so many thoughts about all of that. That was really good. One is it still kind of goes back to my message of you are your responsibility. So your body is your responsibility, your mind is your responsibility. I agree with you also in I believe that words have power. And so try not to, I still work on it, but try not to, just say like, oh, my cancer and my, like don't claim that as yours. Like that's something that you've healed from. Or try not to constantly be like talking negatively about yourself, whether it's just your personality or your toe hurts. Try to really watch what comes out of your mouth and assess it. And then when you talk about the subconscious, it reminds me of just the concept of epigenetics. And I'm definitely not a scientist. I can't describe it totally, but if you've never heard of epigenetics, you should look it up because it's the new science that if you know about it, for somebody like me, it gives me a lot of power. It's essentially, I would say theory, but I believe it. It's what happens. It's the thought that everyone has little genetic mutations. I obviously have one towards breast cancer, but we can turn them on and we can turn them off based on our environment, based on our thoughts, based on our food, based on how inflamed our bodies are. And I think, again, it all starts in the mind. We actually have power over our genes. We have power over our DNA. I have to believe it for myself. And again, it gives me a lot of comfort to know it's not just a crapshoot. It kind of is with genetics, but my aunt has the same issue and she's never had cancer. I mean, who knows why? Like, it doesn't have to be a death sentence if you have some kind of an issue that you know that you're prone to. Like your parents always had diabetes or something like that. That's in my genetics. It's just what's going to happen. I hear people just every day like talk like, oh, that's just genetic. That's what happens. It doesn't have to be.
That just goes along with whether anybody wants to accept that as true or not. That goes along with the narrative of, I'm not going to be in control. I'm not going to be able to change this. This is just what I'm dealing with and what I'm going to have to deal with for the rest of my life. And your perception of the greater world, you could say, is limited because you have accepted this narrative and this belief as true. And so you will never even think to look for anything, any evidence or any information that would prove you wrong. 99% of human beings, when we believe something, we want to read more about it and watch more about everything that's going to tell us that it's true more and give us more information to support that. How often would you and I turn on a YouTube video and listen to somebody who has a complete opposite belief than us and say, "Hey, let me sit here and watch this person for an hour," right? It is 100% an important and valuable thing for anybody to do, but the reality is most of us aren't going to do that. But if we can, taking it on a smaller scale, if we're in a conversation with someone and we have maybe polar opposite beliefs or a difference in opinion on something, one thing I was talking about on the last podcast I did yesterday is how we've lost the ability to listen as a society, as a
Mhm.
whole, as human beings. It's so much of, okay, this person disagrees with you. All right, first word that comes out of their mouth, no, I hate you. I can't even listen to you. You're wrong. And you know, for let's say it's a political or religious belief, in those two realms, people are usually pretty, I don't want to say stuck in their beliefs, but they have their beliefs and they're probably not going to change it. But I would say for anybody who's religious or political, you don't have to listen to somebody in the mindset of, okay, let me listen to them because so they can prove me wrong and I can change my belief. But listen to them because they're another human being and maybe you can learn something. I would say I'm a spiritual person. I'm not a part of any religion, but I understand that every religion has value to be taken from it, right? And let's say you're Jewish and you look at somebody who's Catholic or Christian, you're like, there's no way I can't listen to that. They're wrong. After you have 10,000 conversations with this Christian or Catholic, you might not become Christian or Catholic, but you're definitely going to learn a lot. And then, of course, putting any religion or politics aside, this goes for the grand scheme of life, right? I have adopted the mindset, and I believe it's something that everybody should take to heart, and this is that in every single conversation that you have with anybody, go into the conversation assuming that they know something that you don't, because 100% of the time it's going to be true.
Yeah.
Might not be what you want to hear, but or it could just be something that you've never thought about before and they teach you
Mhm.
about it, right? And being open to learning. I mean, I know this goes into a little bit of a different segue, but I used to be pretty insecure about whatever knowledge I had, right? Or more importantly, what knowledge I didn't have. So I'd be in a group setting and people would be talking about something and they're like, oh yeah, this, that. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, what the fuck are they talking about? But I was like, all right, well, I don't want to ask because I don't want to feel stupid. And then, because sometimes when I would ask, people would go, oh, Brad, I can't believe you don't know this. And what I've learned from that is you should ask the questions anyway, right? And that's what I do now. And of course, in having mature conversations with people through podcasting and in everyday life, people don't really call me stupid anymore. But I would say for maybe some people in my close friend group, sometimes guys like to joke around with each other and stuff. But anyway, if I don't know something, if someone's talking about something I'm not aware of it, hey, what do you mean by that? What does that mean? And then my friend might laugh at me and say, "Oh, Brad, you're stupid. I can't believe you didn't know that." And then they'll tell me what it is, and I've been able to develop, because this didn't come naturally. I've been able to develop to that part of him calling me stupid. Just put that to the side and ignore that, and okay, get the value from it, right? And I mean that's just the importance of asking questions because we can always learn something.
Yeah, and I would just call that growth mindset comes to mind, that word, and that can be applied to any area of your life. Like you said, just information that you don't know and you want to expand upon, but like shame is a tough one. Like shame really can do some damage to your mind, body, and soul. And so stepping out of that and growing in your confidence and just like you said, growth is a great thing. So whether it's just information, like you said, or health and wellness and nutrition, people get pretty stuck in their ways. And there's so much information out there that you can find out about how to tend to or take care of your mind, body, and your spirit.
We've been blessed over the last few decades to have the internet being
Yep.
introduced, and I mean it's how much more knowledge can we possess than really any one human being could at like any time at all. Somebody who was born in, let's say, 1940, the amount of knowledge that they have in certain areas doesn't compare to a lot and anybody of any age nowadays, because we have so much more access to information. And that's not to say that that person born in 1940s is stupid and I can't believe they didn't know that. It's not saying that. It's just acknowledging the blessing that we're able to explore so much knowledge that just, I mean, you could say quite literally wasn't accessible to us before unless you met someone in person who did that job or knew that knowledge before the internet. I mean, I wasn't alive before the internet existed, but I'm assuming, if you wanted to learn about psychology, you had to go and talk to a psychologist or somebody who has done the research or somebody who's in that field, because otherwise, I mean, how would you, if you haven't studied it in the school system, how would you know anything about it? And now it's like, wait a minute, that all that stuff is still there, and it's still great to talk to people who are in the profession and all that stuff. But now I'm able to take 15 seconds out of my day. What does this concept in psychology mean? And then articles, videos, professionals online, people just giving their opinions, different thought processes, different ideas, and I mean it's just such a beautiful place.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for the internet for sure. I don't know what I would have done, back in during the second diagnosis if I didn't have access to the internet, because a lot of the deep dives I took were a podcast and a lot of the inspo too, like hearing about other people who had used food as nutrition and done some of the practices that I was doing and how they people heal without any intervention medically, which wasn't my story, but just to know that there's like a lot of people out there that do this. They choose the natural healthy route versus going on chemotherapy or surgery or radiation. Again, like either way, whatever you choose, do your thing, do your due diligence, do your research, do what's best for you, and then believe in it. But hearing people's stories, and that's kind of why I'm here again, like is hopefully people will hear this story and it will help. And I've heard you say that before on your podcast, like, or just in your interviews, where even if you just want to help one person, like nobody cares, nobody listens to this, and you just help one person, then our job is done, right? And so now what I'm doing, this experience has blown my mind, transformed my life. Like I'm a totally different person in so many ways now that, I've kind of gone past that time in my life and had that healing miracle. So the past 6 months, I've been studying to be a health coach. And I've gotten a certification with a program called Integrative Health Practitioner. I've gotten a level 1 certification, which means that I'm basically like a trained health coach for all things mind, body, soul, including, success mindset, detoxification, diet, exercise, basically taking into like that whole picture of if you have a symptom, well, let's look at it from a perspective of everything in your life, like lifestyle medicine, and get you better and get your mind right where it needs to be to heal. I'm in the level 2 training now where I'll actually be able to do functional lab work, like at home lab work that I'll send to my clients. And that's really exciting for me because for a lot of reasons, like my background, I'm actually a full-time professor. So having data, I love to see data. So I think it'll be really cool to, give people the opportunity to look at their labs. And these are like subclinical labs that typically you don't get to run in your doctor's office and see like exactly what vitamin that they need or exactly what mineral or exactly how much they really do need to work on their stress because it's showing up in their body. I've started with just a few clients. I'm very much in the infancy stage of my business, but it's so rewarding. And I'll say that just as another like inspo, like if you've been through something difficult, even if you haven't been through that much in your life, like helping other people will level you up in life. It will get you to the next level. And it's so rewarding intrinsically. Working with the ladies that I work with helps me. Giving back really helps me. It helps keep me accountable to my health. And it helps me feel like, again, I'm here. I've got a purpose in this world.
A small impact, even if it's like just small at the beginning, is still an impact. And I saw someone's post the other day, and it was what somebody else would have said to them. Oh, come on, man, you only have 100 followers. And he then said, well, if 100 people came up to me in real life and said that I changed something in their life, like I would break down crying, and that would be
Yeah, I saw
absolutely
that
amazing.
too. I saw that too.
Yeah.
And my Instagram, like I just started a few months ago. So there's like a couple hundred people on there, but I connect with a lot of the ladies on there. And it has given me so much fulfillment. And I do try to think about it like, okay, if all these people were in the room listening to me, want to try to provide them value and support and community. I want to grow my following, but to me, it's really more about connecting with the right person. And again, like going back to what I've heard you say, Brad, even if it's just that one person that hears your message, that you provide value, inspiration, or help to in some kind of way, like that's why I think podcasts are beautiful too. Like these things will go on forever.
I very recently started coaching as well. Being able to talk to people one-on-one and go through the issues that they're dealing with it's on another level, because like, I've been podcasting for well over a year, approaching 2 years sometime soon within the next few months. I get tons of positive comments and feedback, and of course negative feedback too. But people, they're like, hey, this really helped me out, etc.,
Mhm.
etc. And that's beautiful. And then it's taking it a step further when you're able to sit in front of someone and
Mhm.
really know how much an impact they have. Because even though the few people that leave comments that actually watch the content, I ask myself, how many people, let's say 100 people viewed the video, how many of them took value from it? And it's like, I'll never know. Maybe 50 of them saw it and they forgot about it right after they watched it and they moved on with their life. Maybe there's 25 of them that watched it, they resonated with it, and they said, huh, maybe I should change this in my life, or maybe I should try doing this. And then they did that. And that was as a result of something that I put out. I'm always conscious and doing my best to avoid the ego part of it. I was like, yeah, I'm doing this.
Mhm.
I'm helping people do it. And it's like, yes, I am, but
Mhm.
I'm the messenger, right? It's like I went through my experiences and now I'm kind of like, all right, well, this information really would have helped me if I was in this
Yeah,
dark place. So
you're
let me
exact
put it out here. If it helps you, thank God. If it
that's how
doesn't,
I
that's
feel.
okay too.
Absolutely, that's how I feel. Of again, like I just trying to figure it all out on my own for months and months at a time. And so I feel like I would love to help somebody else. And I am. I'm helping a few people right now and it feels really good. So yeah, if anybody wants to look into my services, I have a website. It's Enjoyably Healthy. So Joya is my name, enjoyablyhealthy.com. And that's my Instagram handle too, enjoyably.healthy on Instagram.
What role does spirituality have in day to day life and in all of your experiences?
My relationship with God is the number one thing in my life for sure. I follow Jesus and he is so good. He is so good. I've been doing some reflecting and I pulled out one of my old journals. Okay, let me show you. Can you see all those sticky notes?
Yes.
One day I'm gonna write a book. I started reading this last year and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. This is like a book, all those things that I've been through the day after I got diagnosed. And I'll just read like 4 lines to you, okay? My soul thirsts for God, the living God. When I go and meet with God, I don't understand this, but I trust you, God. You brought me this far and you won't leave me now. I know my present pain will not even compare to my future victory. God, add years to my life. Heal my body once again. And he did. He did. Like, I can't tell the story without talking about that part of it. You know, I'm like you, like, I respect everyone's religion. I'm open to working with all kinds of people. But for me, I have a deep faith, and I wake up at like 4:45, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to do my devotions, I'm doing my prayers, I'm doing a little meditation. I love like the woo woo, like vibes and meditation. I love that kind of stuff too. But I think it's all from God. I think the food that heals us is from God. I think the peace that we can feel when we're in that really horrible rock bottom, that little bit of relief that comes from God. And again, going back to there is hope. There is hope if you're struggling physically, mentally, spiritually, there's hope. Thank you for asking me that question.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I did. And thanks for explaining that. How often do you hear people ask God for help or to get them out of the situation and then they experience more pain or more struggle? I would say the explanation for that, I'm sure you would agree, is that whatever God you believe in or whatever faith they or it is bringing that more struggle to you, because what you don't realize is, yes, it may suck in the moment, but on the other side, you'll look back at that. Maybe it's a week down the line, maybe it's 5 years down the line, but you'll look back and you'll say, oh, that's why that had to happen.
Yeah.
And then it all starts to make sense.
Yeah, in the Bible it says all things work together for the good of those who love him. And that's how I look at my life. You know, again, like I thought I was going to be this little housewife and maybe one day I will be again, but um, my life has just exploded in different ways that I never would have thought. Even 6 months ago, 2 years ago, things just keep happening as I go through this journey of becoming a health coach and trying to help others and get my message out that I see signs from him. I feel him, even just me and you, like meeting and how we've come to create this lovely podcast. It's all for a reason. And every single one of us, whether you're going through a hard time or a medium time or a difficult time or a great time, this is what life is. It's a roller coaster. It's an up and down, but your life has purpose. Every one of us, we have a story, we have a journey, we have a purpose. So just keep going.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. And I always I always do my best in my own life and to share with others to just make sure that we keep gratitude at, it's not always going to be at the forefront of our mind, but as much as we can be aware of it and feel grateful, we should. That allows us to be granted a feeling and experiences. It makes it a little bit better, right? The situation may completely suck, but if you have some sort of gratitude and you understand that it's not permanent, because if you think about any area of life, any realm, any situation ever, quite literally nothing is permanent. Your existence on earth isn't impermanent. Your experience in this job isn't permanent. Your relationship partner isn't permanent. Even if you get married and you spend the rest of your lives with each other, you know you could say it ends in death, right? And of course, there's a conversation to be had about the soul and things that happen after death and stuff like that. But from being here, quite literally everything is permanent, or not permanent, not permanent. And you think about that in the stuff that you're going through. I think Alex Hormozy said this,
I love
and
Alex
he's
Murphy.
he's awesome.
Yeah.
And he said, I think he was referring to, think about all of those past times in your life where you thought you weren't going to make it, and you're here right now, and
Yep.
you made it, and you're thinking it now, I'm going through this, I'm not going to make it. Well, that's happened 10 other times and you made it. And
Mhm.
so it's realizing that
Keep going.
none of this is permanent.
Yep, just keep going. It's worth it. It gets better and better as time goes on. I'm 42 now, so I do remember when we did not have the internet. It did suck.
Yeah, I mean,
But it keeps
uh,
it keeps getting better. And I really like with you, Brad, I feel like you're a little bit of a old soul. You have a lot of wisdom for your age. You're younger than I am. So I just can't wait to see how you develop over the next 10, 20 years. Like you're going to just continue on with your wisdom and sharing people's stories. It's a really beautiful thing. And I think that you're on the right path. Like you're living your purpose.
I appreciate the kind words, and yeah, I'm excited to see where everything in life goes. And everybody can always go back to, all right, the knowledge that you have can be a blessing and a curse. I refer to it more as a blessing, although I would say sometimes, I guess for me to open up a little bit, is sometimes it's hard to connect with certain people because it's not me, and me saying this isn't saying they're dumber or they're stupider. It's just we're different, right? I would say that my mind, the direction my mind has come to go in, and the
Yeah.
knowledge that I learn is a little bit different than what most people my age think about and what most people do. And so sometimes I like to refer to it as, sometimes I can meet a handful of people, but it seems like it's the same person in a different body. Along this journey through podcasting and in my personal life and just going up to people and meeting them, I've been able to meet so many amazing people, and a good amount of people my age also that think like this and have these realms of thought. And that all goes back to just, you attract what you are,
Mm,
and you put out more positivity, for example, you get more of
mhm.
that back. And
Agree.
that's not to say you put out positivity and you're more positive in your life. That's not to say that there's never anything negative that's ever going to happen, or you're never going to have a bad day. That's not what it's about. It's just about making your life better because you're being more positive, for example, and then that will then allow you to meet people that you would have never been able to meet if you didn't have that mindset or you weren't in that positive mood. Because I mean, there's even days for me where I'm just not in a good mood, and let's say I go to the gym and I got my headphones on and I'm just there by myself. There's been a few people that I've met in the gym that have been really cool individuals and I've been able to make a connection with. And it's like, all right, well, obviously I'm going to have bad days, but if that day maybe I was in a little bit of a better mood, maybe I would have met someone that would have helped me in my life, or I would have been able to help them or make some sort of new connection. The whole general concept of this is, I began to realize that for anybody at any age who feels like they might be a little bit different, it's not a bad thing, because that's just, I always go back to, every single human being is on a different journey, and that's the path that
Mhm.
you're on. And to embrace that, because, and I also give the example of, okay, people like people who are a little bit different, right? It's like anybody who's listening can say, okay, let's say you go and meet 10 people. 8 of them may not seem like they're that interesting. They're just like, I don't know. They don't vibe with you. And then there's 2 people who you meet and they're like, oh yeah, I do this. And, I've been thinking about this a lot recently. And maybe it's something that you're interested in or something that you've never heard before. And it's like, wow, this person is interesting because they're different, right? And everybody is different in some sort of way, right? There's some area of every single person's life that is watching this that, you're a little bit different than most people in this certain area. My thought process with that is to embrace that and to grow with that, because not everybody is going to accept you and cherish you for having those certain differences, but there are people out there that will, and those are the ones that matter the most.
Yeah, well said.
Thank you. Well, Joya, it was a pleasure having you on today. Thanks so much for sharing your story and having this incredible conversation.
Oh, thank you, Brad. Thank you for sharing your podcast and this time with me as well. It's been such a pleasure getting to know you over this process, and I just really appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. I know you mentioned some of your platform and your Instagram stuff before. Do you want to shout it out again?
Yeah, sure. Enjoyably Healthy. One word, enjoyablyhealthy.com, enjoyably healthy on Instagram. And my name's
Okay.
Joya.
Perfect. All right. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Sounds good. Bye.